Let's now talk about objects in JavaScript. Recall we have talked about objects as one of the composite data types, which is to say that they are container objects that can contain the primitive data types as well as other objects. JavaScript is an object-oriented language. As I had mentioned earlier, recall that objects are composite data types and can hold primitive data types as well as other composite data types. JavaScript objects are represented as name-value pairs. If you know what hash tables or associative arrays are in other languages, JavaScript objects resemble them a lot. If you don't know, no worries. It is sufficient to know that an object is a container that contains name-value pairs. The names are typically known as properties and the values are just called values. Now here, if you look between line 10 and 15, this is how a JavaScript object looks like. On the left hand side, we have this variable a house that has been declared, and we are assigning to it whatever is here within the curly braces. The right hand side of this this equal statement, everything within the curly braces, is how a JavaScript object looks like. As I said, these are just name value pairs. So here the first name is called roof and the value assigned to it is called shingle, and then there is door and the value assigned to it is metal door, and so on. And there is one curious thing here. One of these names is put in double quotes. The window property is in double quotes and it's assigned a value glass. There is no difference between using names by directly writing them or putting them within double quotes. So it is preferable that you write them without the double quotes because it's a little bit easier to understand. It's a little bit closer to its original purpose. Another thing to notice is that between each name value pairs, there's a colon here, and that after each name value pair, you have to put a comma. That's about the syntax. To access the properties in a JavaScript object, you just put the object name, then you put a dot, and then you put the name of the property. So here we are trying to print the roof, and so we are saying a house dot roof. Similarly, even though you see that this property window is declared with double quotes around it, when accessing it, you can just say a house dot window. After an object has been created, you can add more properties to it. There are two ways of adding properties. One is by using the earlier access syntax that we had seen. You can just put the object name and then put a dot next to it and then the property name, and then you can assign it a value. So as you can see, this chimney property was not earlier defined when we originally defined the object, but here we just say object name dot chimney equals and we assign it a value tall and black, and this automatically creates a property and attaches it to the object. The second way of doing the same thing is you declare the object name and then you say within double quotes the property name, and this whole thing has to be within square brackets, and they say equal and then the value. This is another way of assigning a value to a property in an object or attaching a new property to an object. This brings in the other point which I earlier forgot to put in. So this line here, this is another way of accessing a property. So here you say the object name, square brackets, and within double quotes the properties name. This is you may see it somewhere and it is perfectly legal and valid, but it's not a very good idea to use this syntax because it just makes reading code a little bit harder. So preferably use this particular syntax where you say object name dot property name. So you can see here now we are printing the three things here: the name of the property kitchen, and then we are printing it again using a different syntax, and then we are printing it again using the same syntax, the object name dot property name. Now one cool thing to notice is that you can put objects inside other objects. I had already said it that objects are containers and they can contain other objects. I mean, they are composite objects, right? They are composite data types really. So here on line 31, you can see I declare a new variable castle and I'm assigning it an object by putting this thing within the curly braces. In here, the cool thing to notice is, see, this is just like before. The roof and the armory, they are similar. But on the right hand side, now we have a curly brace starting on the same line. This is important, it has to be on the same line. And then here, this is the finishing one. Inside this, so this effectively creates an object and assigns it to the property armory. Inside this little object, we have a property named spare, and then the value sharp and long, and then bow, and the value flexible. And then after the first property has been declared, we finish it up with a comma, and then the second one starts stables, and then it has a property called horses white and black. And you can see here that the access syntax goes like this. You always put the object name and then the property name. In this case, we will say, if you want to say, let's say access sphere, so first we access the armory property by saying castle.armory, and then since armory is again an object, we can say dot and then access the final property sphere. So this is how you can see we are accessing the sphere and the horses. Castle.armory.sphere. Each time you see an object, you put a dot after it so that you can access its property. Let's run the program now. So we'll run it using Node, and we can see that line 25 prints the kitchen property using one particular format, one particular access method where you put double quotes, and then the second one where we don't put double quotes, we just use the dot. So here we see that it's being printed using the double quote one and then the non-double quote one, and then we are printing the chimney. Then we are also printing the two nested objects, the castle.armory.sphere and castle.stables.horses over here in the last two one. So that is how the objects work in JavaScript. Now there is one interesting thing. If you have any experience with any other object-oriented language, here is something to think about. Most languages have the concept of a class. A class in most languages is a blueprint. You can use the blueprint to create the objects, but the blueprint by itself is an abstract entity which is not of much use. In most languages, to create an object, you must have a blueprint. By contrast, JavaScript has no concept of a class or a blueprint built in. If you want to create an object, well, go ahead and just type it up and add all the properties that you want to it. You can also, at any point of time, add more properties to an existing JavaScript object dynamically. I mean, as you saw here, right? We can add the properties even after we have created the object. This feature is not present in pretty much most languages. This feature is quite powerful, and in future we will see how we can extend objects. We can do very much fun things with objects by using this particular method of extending existing objects.